This is a short video, maybe 4 minutes long, regarding some of the just characteristics of minerals that will help you identify them. So I want to start off with the lighter ones. This is a quartz crystal, and if you look down the axis of it, you can kind of see that, yeah, it has a hexagonal pattern, 6 sides, and it comes to a point. This is pretty easy to identify. It's very hard. It's not as hard as topaz or your gems like corundums, but they are hard enough to put a little bit of a scratch on glass. They drag across a glass surface. I wanted to jump to the other types of quartz. So you have milky quartz. You don't see that same sort of crystals, nice glassy crystals coming out of it, but just like quartz crystal, it can, I guess, scratch glass, and you can't scratch it with your finger, and you can't really scratch it with metal easily. So they have quartz properties, a little bit harder than 6 on the Mohs hardness or whatever. So you also have quartz amethyst. So just a lot of different types of quartz. Topaz, again, is harder than quartz, and maybe you can try to sometimes take topaz and scratch the surface of the quartz crystal to see that you have topaz. Sometimes this is hard to identify, and it can really, of course, put a groove in your glass surface. Also want to talk about fluorite. Fluorite has very different colors. It's kind of a glassy, but maybe not as clear as your quartz crystal. It can be purple, green. This one doesn't seem to have much color. They are not as hard, and if you break them, they tend to cleave on clean lines, so it cleaves more than it fractures. But you can take, and I'm just going to see if I can scratch. You can scratch the surface. I'll come down here and see if I can hold that while I scratch the surface. Yeah, you can see that I just put a scratch on that with my metal here. So it's like a 4, I believe, in hardness. So fluorite is sometimes easy to identify by its color, green or purple. Looks somewhat glassy, but maybe not as much as quartz, and it's softer and it cleaves. Going down to 2 that are sometimes confused, I'm going to grab a little bit of this calcite and bring it over to some gypsum selenide. So calcite has what we call a rhombic, kind of leaning house sort of crystal pattern. So if you look at that, it's like a leaning house. But you also get that with your gypsum selenide. But the best way to tell the difference between these two is hardness. So I'm going to take what's calcite, I brought it over, and I try to scratch it with my finger, and I can't. So I'll put it back over with the category of calcite here. And there's different types of calcite. Sometimes you don't see that leaning house or rhombic pattern, but sometimes you really do. I mean, that is a very good crystal of calcite. Again, you can't scratch it with your finger. You can scratch it with metal. You could take that and make sure you can scratch it with that. But let me show you what happens if I take gypsum and I put my finger to it. You really have to, but I am putting in, you can see those scratch marks. That is what happens when you take gypsum selenide, or any gypsum for that matter, and scratch it. It's soft. Now, gypsum selenide is kind of different from gypsum's satin spar. Satin spar doesn't seem to have as much of a pattern to it, or it's not as glassy. But you can still scratch it with your finger. It's soft. There's different types of gypsums. I'm going to stop this video with these 2. You have the mica muscovite, which is plainer. It comes off in sheets. So does the mica biotin. I'm going to show you with this one. It's just a little bit darker and easier to see with the camera. So I just took and peeled off of this surface another one that's just like it. That's the property of mica. You have mica biotite, which is black, maybe B for black, mica biotite, and mica muscovite, which is more clear. Thanks.